Hey guys, welcome to today's video. It's pretty much going to be on the video above from Silhouette Gaming, why players walk away, and 3 reasons why he thinks that players walk away from Guild Wars 2. It's not exactly what I'm going to be talking about, but I got inspired when I was watching his video. I was actually watching Maklak's reacting to his video. Now, I don't have permission, so I'm not going to react bit by bit to his video, but it kind of got me thinking about myself, because I am one person who's been playing Guild Wars 2 quite a lot. And there are moments and things that I think basically just make a player want to stop playing. So let's go through a few of those. So let's go through this piece by piece. There are things that are MMO related to people wanting to quit playing the game, and then there are things specific to Guild Wars 2. Let's quickly go through some of the general MMO ones. 1. Your life gets busy. Like, you start playing a game, you're having fun, you're going through content, and then you get a job, or you get a promotion, or you finish university, or you have a kid, or get married, or whatever. You just have less time to play the game. And that's just gonna happen. Like, single player games, you can literally play in like smaller chunks. When it comes to games like Guild Wars 2 and MMOs in general, you're like waiting for a fractal group, waiting for a raid group. Maybe not PvP, you could probably slide those in, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you also know that there's like, this match takes this much time or whatever. Or you can't do world v world. Or like, you log on and you wait for like, I don't know, Dragon Stand to happen. And you've got to like wait for the group to form. You just don't have like an hour or 2 hours to wait around for the content you want to do. And that frustrates people. People just like leave because they just, you know, their life's just getting too busy. They don't have that sort of time. Now on the flip side to that, your friends' lives get busy. Like, you start playing with a group of mates or whatever, and all of a sudden, they are the ones, you know, going to university or finishing university, getting a job, having kids, blah, blah, blah. Then you just don't have anyone to play with. You log on, you look at your friends list, and, you know, there's just not really anyone online. I mean, flipping sad example here for me, if I look at all my mates, is some of these guys have been offline for like 2 years, 6 months, 7 months. You just get sad. You're like, bro, what are we doing? Like, there's not that many people jamming. You know, obviously there's new players coming to the game. There's people just jamming the game all the time. But maybe your friendship group are just, you playing different games, or they've just stopped gaming in general. And then I would say the final, like, general MMO thing is that you're just disillusioned with the content. You don't really know what you're doing in the game. I think when you're playing a game and you know you're grinding, like, I'm just trying to get fractals down. I'm just teleport here and pick up these things from these pack suppliers, loot these chests. And it's basically just this rotation of like things you need to get done in a day rather than playing a game. You hit a point in your brain where you're like, I'm pretty much working, or I'm just ticking boxes. I'm not actually having fun. It's like, you know, when it becomes like a job kind of thing. And those are, all 3 of those reasons, in my opinion, are just general MMO. That applies to ESO, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, all of them. There's been times in all of these games where I've hit a point where I'm like, I'm actually not really having fun. And then I would probably go on to the next one and hit that point in something else. Now let's get on to the specific things that Silhouette Gaming goes through for Guild Wars 2. His first point is actually brilliant. His first point talks about the armor and the weapon progression in Guild Wars 2. Traditional MMOs kind of have this thing with like item level, where you get like, say, like a piece of like 300 or 400 item level, and then if you do harder content, it's like 305, 405, blah blah blah, and you basically have this incentive to grind for more. Guild Wars 2 doesn't have that. They have exotic armor, which is like fairly cheap to get. I mean, there's obviously a couple of tiers, but exotic, like the orange tier armor, is fairly easy to get. And then you have Ascended, which is the same as Legendary, and that's about like 5% more stat-wise, kind of overall, you know, plus minus. But then you can put in like other things like Agony Infusions, which allows you to do fractals. Now, obviously, if you do PvP, none of that matters because PvP has standardized gear. And if you do World vs. World, it does matter, but to quite a small degree. So basically, he's talking about that long-term kind of like strengthening of your character, that feeling stronger. But I think he kind of goes a little bit short on this topic. I think that there is actually a psychological like connection between players and getting better drops. If you play World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, maybe, I don't actually know kind of what the drops are like. I haven't played that in quite a while. well, like I've been playing Lord of the Rings Online for the last while. There is so much like dopamine hit when you get this like ridiculous drop. Like you've been waiting for shoulders to drop, or like that pocket item, or that ring or whatever, and it drops, and you're like, yes. Or it like drops for someone else in the raid or whatever, and you're like message him and you're like, bro, I'll buy that from you. I'll freaking I'll do things that I wouldn't even do for my freaking spouse. Let's make it happen, kind of thing. And when you get that piece, you're like, yes. And like sometimes you kind of hit this point in games where like your gear is so much better than everybody else's around you that when you do any content, whether it's like your party content or your raid content, you're hitting harder than everybody else. Everyone's seeing your big numbers, things like that. And there's just something so nice about that in a game. I like the fact that Guild Wars 2 doesn't have that. But it is nice to have that. I have a few friends that have played Guild Wars 2 in the past, and they're kind of just like, I don't like it. I don't like not having that dopamine hit of being able to grind for gear or get better gear. And that's just not what type of game Guild Wars 2 is. Guild Wars 2 is not that game. And some people love it, and some people don't. And some people like it for a time, but then kind of after a while, once you've been at endgame and you've basically had best in slot gear for however long, you kind of like, what's the point of doing certain content? Like, what is the point of raiding, fractals, PvP, world versus world? Because you can do the content, but like, what's the point? Like, in terms of like, is there like a motivation beyond just getting a little bit of gold so you can get like cosmetics, So I'm not pushing down Guild Wars 2. I'm just saying that I think there is quite a bit of a psychological like connection between that. Now for Silhouette Gaming's like second point, again, he does a fairly good job. He talks about the fact that there's too little and too much content at the same time. It kind of is hard to pinpoint exact point there, but it kind of is true. Guild Wars 2 is kind of a bit of a strange game when it comes to that sort of like a thing. Basically, there is so much content in this game. There are so many maps that you can do, meta maps, and they give valuable rewards. But with that becomes also the fact that things are limited. Limited PvP maps, limited world versus world kind of structure and maps, very limited raiding. Even though they are working on fractals little by little with each kind of mini expansion, they will bring in more. It's still kind of like, you can think that in a couple of years' time there will be a lot of content, but as like players that have been playing the game for a while, you kind of like, that's the same, just run this, we do this. Because Guild Wars 2 in essence, in my opinion, is like a dance. Once you can do it, right? Like, it's not like it changes that much week on week. There are obviously things that change, and fractal kind of instabilities keep things fresh, right? But when things become too samey, right? Like, exact same meta comps for, PvP, exact same styles for raiding fractals, you kind of become in that mindset of, it's just the grind. We do this to get the loot. It kills people's passion, right? Like, it's not really great when you're like, just rinse, repeat every single time. Then he goes into the current expansion, which in my opinion is like dog shit tier. Like, it is not a good expansion. I've tried so hard to kind of do this expansion. I basically, on the newest map, that's not even the newest map because it's been out for like months, I've tried it to start it like 3 times and just kind of like, every single time I hit a green bar, I'm like, no, stuff it. Like, I'm going to go do something else rather. Like, what the hell? Like, but with that, the new expansion has addressed a lot of feature of lives. Like, they've brought out the new daily reward systems. They've brought out like a whole bunch of new things, new weapon proficiencies, like new mastery systems, everything. So I understand that there was a lot of content brought out in the newest expansion, but like, if you look at actually just like the story and the like furtherance of meta events and kind of evergreen content, like if you didn't know the kind of quality of lives that came with this expansion, you just looked at the expansion as is, you would be like, it's pretty crap. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't really have much to add on this point. I don't think that he's really missed a beat on this point. I think that Guild Wars is one of those things where there's going to be favored meta events. Your Auric Basins, your Tangled Depths, things like that. People just do because they're fun, they're quick, and they're like really good mechanically to the degree that a massive 150 people can hop on a map, pop it out, and everyone's having a good time, right? It's not super stressful like, oh, we're going to kill it, or we're going to like spend 2 hours of our night building up to some meta event and then you know, stuff it up and then we don't get loot, you know. People don't want that. Like, it's nice to have those tougher meta events, but like, people also don't want to waste their time, right? So when you look at some of the content that is out there, certain meta events that just don't have people doing them because people just don't want to do them. They're not fun. They're too long. There's a risk of not getting it too so much to the degree that people just don't want to waste their time. In my opinion, that's bad content. That needs to be adjusted to make sure that people want to do it. There should be this like fairly flat line of like kind of everybody wants to do all the content, right? Because if there isn't, if you have like meta events up here and ones down here, they should relook at that. Now, case in point, pretty much me. I never really do content when it's released. Like, new expansion hits out, I'll maybe do like the map completion and stuff, and I won't really get all the mastery points. I'm very bad with that because I'm too ADHD. I can't sit in a map and just keep on doing things. So what happens is I come back later when like no one else is doing the map, and then you can't do certain achievements because you can't solo maybe like this champion boss or whatever. If you want to do like the return to, because you want the legendary neck piece, and you've got to go back to all the old season 4 maps, yes, on certain days you'll find like meta trains going through and popping everything. And if you throw up an apple and be like doing this like achievement for a legendary item, people will probably join you. But like some people are just not comfortable doing that. So you might go to a map and there might be just be like you and like 5-6 other guys on the map. And like, you know, how are you supposed to do those content? Like, how are you supposed to enjoy the fullness of the game? And that is frustrating. Like, I have literally kind of started achievements for, you know, when it was like Vision and stuff, started trying to do it and then just been like, you know, stuff, I'm just going to give up. Like, and then, you know, come back to it later on and be like, okay, I'm doing Vision again. I'm not going to give up this time. It just happens, you know? So then for his third and final point, he brings up basically content that the community has released, you know, guides, add-ons, things like that, and just general YouTube content. You know, which is quite funny because he's right though, because the videos that do the best is like how to play this in PvP, this in raids, this in fractals, open world build, you know, that sort of a thing, or achievement videos. I mean, how many freaking times, especially before I even bothered, did I watch, you know, videos that went like this?
Hey guys, it's Ayan. This is Vision's 2 Farsight achievement. You just need to kneel at 20 mastery insights from Season 4 maps. Enjoy watching.
But that's quite funny because, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really consume that much content from a lot of games. Like, even when I play World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or Lord of the Rings Online, I don't like sit and watch tons of content around it. Maybe I might scope a video or two about a rotation, things like that. And also what's quite funny to me is, like, if you look at Guild Wars 2's like active player count. Okay, so here we've got, this is obviously not exactly like good gospel of like a record, but this is MMO populations. They had basically on record that we had about 180k players per day, and your yearly active chart was probably between like 500,000 to 400k. You can see this is steep drop off, but that's because I think they just don't have information for that time. So I don't necessarily think everybody just died off that played Guild Wars 2. Now, if you compare that with the best YouTube creators, like here's Maklak on like almost 90k viewers, and you've got Teapot on like 70k. Those are the two, in my opinion, I mean, they may be bigger, but I think these are the two biggest Guild Wars 2 creators. And they're basically doing about a quarter of the active player base, which means there's about 3/4 of players that just don't consume content. And that's kind of expected. I think that there isn't that much content in terms of Guild Wars 2. Like, you know, even when I stream it, I think to myself, like, what content should I do around? Like, is it just me clearing raids, just clearing fractals, just speedrunning stuff? Like, is that what people really want to watch? But then again, I mean, what other content is there in other games? Like, if you get some guy jamming World of Warcraft, he's doing pretty much the exact same thing. He's grinding Mythic Plus, raiding, you know, whatever. He could be out leveling or something like that. You can be doing open world content in Guild Wars 2. To be honest, I don't think it's the game itself. It's the reason why, like, people are not jamming on Guild Wars 2 content. I think it's pretty much just up to people's imagination. I mean, how does anyone create any content around any game? Like, it's basically just up to them to crank out content that people want to see. And also, like, is it pretty much, like, content in general that will make someone stop playing a game? If they're, like, looking at a game and they're like, no one's posting videos about the game I'm playing, like, I'm gonna just stop playing it. I don't necessarily think that would have the effect people think it would. on play counts. I mean, I couldn't care less when I started playing this game if people were creating content. You know, like, it just didn't really, and to be honest, none of that affects me. Like, I don't really ever play, like, Final Fantasy and be like, oh, people haven't been posting, but, you know, it just doesn't work that way for me. But something I think that does actually have effect is pretty much the aesthetic of the game. Like, not having as many add-ons to tailor the game the way you want to have it. UI options, things like that. Like, having those sorts of, like, add-ons in World of Warcraft to customize everything the way you want it is pretty awesome. And I think pretty much a lot of the other aspects of a game that Guild Wars doesn't really operate in, but they probably should. They've got such a good cosmetic system. I think they should tailor it more towards that sort of a thing, and the RP and the ERP side. Not for me, but for my friend. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's so much of that aspect that is so good in the game, but they never really tap into that. And that's pretty much most of what he spoke about. I've kind of given a little bit of an improvement or a different view, but he's not wrong on a lot of these things. I think there's definitely the dopamine hits that people miss from, like, vertical progression games, you know. And I would say if I had to add anything to this list, I would say just general disillusionment with Guild Wars 2. Because Guild Wars 2 is that horizontal progression, right? Like, you've got best in slot armor, now what? Like, what content do I do? And it's so tough. Pretty much as a player, you should just be like, what do I want to do? Do I want to do PvP for like 3 weeks? Stuff all PvE, stuff world versus world. I'm just going to go do that. Or do you say, you know what, stuff all this competitive content, I'm just going to do meta events and just enjoy that. That's kind of where your mindset needs to be when playing Guild Wars 2, because there isn't really like a best in slot macro way to play. And that's the thing you need to be careful of. When I started playing, I kind of got into a trading Discord guild, right? So we would trade in high volumes, and I kind of was doing that, and it was all about gold per minute and this and that. And I just hated it. I hated logging in because I was like, oh, I'm missing this, I'm missing that, I'm not doing this enough, I'm not getting enough gold. And it just becomes so stupid. Like, yes, Fractals is the highest probably gold that you can get per like a minute. But if you don't want to do it for the day, you don't have to. Like, you know, obviously if you've got a static, you're probably going to be getting in there. But like, if you're just doing punk content like me, like, you should just be doing content in the game that you enjoy doing. And when you don't do that, that's when the game becomes boring. That's when it becomes monotonous. And that's when you realize, like, I'm playing a video game. Like, I'm not enjoying this. That's the point in the game where you will stop playing. Where you're like, I'm a little bit bored. You know, like, this is kind of monotonous, grindy. And that's where you should say to yourself, if you're playing Guild Wars 2, that's where you should say, you know what, stuff it. Let me stop everything I've been doing and do something different. Let me go do world versus world. Meta maps. Let me try raiding. You know, there's so many freaking good, like, raid discords out there for new players. Like a short plug here. I don't know if you know about this, but there's something called the Raid Academy for NA, and I think the Raid Training Initiative for EU. And also the Crossroad Inns, it looks like. I haven't really played on EU. These discords basically teach you how to raid from like 0 to hero. So if you have literally never played like an MMO and you want to just try raiding, try it in Guild Wars. Like, literally, it's not that hard. Like, get in there, they'll teach you everything, all the mechanics, all the rotation stuff. You can get like one-on-one like time with a tutor. These guys literally just volunteer their time. I'm even like sometimes train a raid. Like, if I just see people in like the, you know, the trainings Discord looking for an instructor and no one pings and they've been sat there for like half an hour, I'll be like, listen, I'm not an instructor, but I can teach you how to do this. These are amazing things. Like, no other game that I've played has this sort of facility. Like, it is amazing. So that's kind of it in a sense. I made this video because I've been thinking about this a lot myself recently. I pretty much came off of Lord of the Rings Online and switched over to Guild Wars as my main game. And I've been enjoying it. I love Guild Wars. I've done pretty much all the raid CMs, pretty much all the fractal CMs, and I just enjoy this game. Like, it is such a good game. It's fast-paced, it's action. You can do it at your own pace. Like I said before, you can just do the content you want to do. But on a personal note, I have struggled. The new expansion has pretty much put a massive bitter taste in my mouth personally. And pretty much, on a super personal note, pretty much my best mate just stopped playing Guild Wars 2 or gaming in general because life moved on. And it's been a bit sad. I've pretty much logged on to NA, and first of all, because I live in Europe, you know, no one's on when I'm on, and all my mates have just stopped playing. And so it's been kind of one of those things where I've been a bit haunted logging into Guild Wars 2. It's just where I'm at the moment. And been thinking about it for quite a bit, and I think I'm actually going to migrate over to EU. Some people don't care too much about that, who cares? But maybe I'll find a bit more like pug life, maybe a bit more LFG life, and try and like get to know some of the people on the EU side. So if you see me on EU, hit me up. If you find me in your group, please don't kick me. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, and I know it's a hard subject, thanks for watching anyway, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.